Welcome to David Behaviour, a horror book review podcast. I'm Marie.
And I'm Beth.
And today's David Behaviour is being a semi-omniscient, voyeuristic first-person narrator.
That's a mouthful.
It really is, but it's definitely some behavior. Before we get started, I just want to give a reminder to support your local bookstore. You can do that by purchasing a physical copy or by using Libro.fm to pick up an audiobook. It's also available on Libby or at your local library. And today's...
What's available?
I was just about to say that. Thank you, Beth. It is No Gods, No Monsters by Cadwell Turnbull. And
It is.
This book is about It's about a lot.
Good luck.
Let me just tell you that. But the very back of the book, just the tiny itty bittiest I can give is, after an event called the Fracture, the existence of monsters becomes an open secret. Although powerful forces are attempting to force a return to secrecy, we learn of a handful of individuals who are fighting for visibility and the potential safety that visibility could bring. We follow a seemingly disconnected group of characters and storylines until they finally begin to converge, and we get an idea of the wider story at hand.
Mm-hmm. And this is the first book in a series.
Yes.
Which might explain some of the, I'll say, the issues that I have with it.
Yeah, I'd agree there. Who do you think this book is for, Beth?
This book, I think people who like fantasy, to be honest, like fantasy and science fiction, because I think while it's kind of horror, I think it's more science fiction fantasy. I think there are like horror elements, but honestly, it didn't feel like horror while I was listening to it.
Yeah, I would agree there. If this is genre, it's very genre adjacent versus being purely horror genre. And I would agree that there are some interesting like fantasy and sci-fi elements that become more clear as the book goes on. But like you mentioned, this is the beginning of a series. So I would say that this book is for people who are wanting to dive into a new world and get that set up and are ready and willing to then move to a second book for more, because there is like a main storyline in this that does get paid off. A lot of it is set up seemingly for the rest of the trilogy.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. I haven't read the second one as a disclaimer, so hard to say about the payoff. But yeah, that's the problem that I have with a lot of first books and like intentional first books as well.
Yeah,
is that setup? It tends to eat up a lot of the page.
Correct. There's a lot of world building in this, and well, I appreciate that in a series. When I'm reading a series, it can be rough when you're only reading the first book. And I imagine, especially if you didn't know that this was part of a series, but I do think that this was announced as a trilogy originally when it came out.
There's only 2 out now, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any similar media that you would recommend based on this book?
Well, this book is, and I think we talked about this before, but this book and a lot of books about outsiders and alienation and like monsters are kind of inherently gay books. So my recommendation is going to be a gay book, which I think yours is as well. But I'm going to recommend Queen of Teeth by Haley Piper. It's not for the faint of heart. I think this one is a horror book, but I think it's good by the end. And I think when you hear the premise is vagina dentata, it might turn you off. And I think that's fair. But also, it's a good book.
And it is. I agree. It is a good book. This is one I've actually read before, and I absolutely agree that it is a good book. And it is a more horror, like gay story than the book that we just read.
Yes. So that's my recommendation. Don't read it, Mom and Dad.
Don't do it. You won't like it. And then, as you rightfully pointed out, my suggestion is also gay. I will admit, it has been a while since I read my suggestion, which is Weave World by Clive Barker. But Clive Barker being Clive Barker, it's gonna be pretty psychosexual and gay probably just like looking at his body of work, you're going to get a lot of that. Your mileage might vary in terms of like how similar it actually is to No Gods, No Monsters. But as I was reading No Gods, No Monsters, I did keep like thinking back to reading Weave World and about the intersecting storylines and the themes of like otherness and monstrosity. And so I think I'm going to read it again. And it is also definitely a little bit more horror than No Gods, No Monsters, but it is still in that fantasy realm if you do like a good fantasy read. And then I also have a suggestion that is not a book. Well, it is a book, but it's not this kind of book. It is the tabletop RPG Here, There, Be Monsters by Wendy Yu. It engages with themes of intersectionality between queer, BIPOC, and disabled identities through the lens of monsters, and it feels very similar to the world of No Gods, No Monsters. Actually, as I was reading through it, a lot of the characters, especially the like more quote unquote side story that I'm not going to be covering as much, almost felt like a Here There Be Monsters campaign that was like getting played on the side of the more like interpersonal main story that was going on. I'll leave a link in the show notes for where you can pick this up on itch.io. I did have the privilege to playtest this game before it came out, and it rules. I love it a lot. It's just a cute little D6, very simple dice light.
Looking forward to playing it. I have the physical copy, and I just bought the PDF as well.
Very nice, very nice. Let's get into what's your experience with this book, with Cadwell Turnbull in general, etc.
So my only experience with Cadwell Turnbull was the story and Out There Screaming, which is Jordan Peele's anthology of short stories, which I think is on your list, I believe, for like potentially.
Yes, it is. I have read it before, and obviously you've read it now, but it is a great short story collection. So yeah,
it is. Yeah, they're all hits, in my opinion. Even this one, which I didn't quite vibe with, the storytelling in it wasn't really my like style, and it was really hard to connect with the characters. And I think it's because it's told sort of like a song or like a folktale. The main character in it is a musician, so I can see why it's told that way, and I think it matches really well. And it seems like that kind of matches with Cadwell Turnbull's style, because this book was also very stylistic and very like, the cadence I felt was very unique, and the way that he wrote was very unique. And I'll admit I got about 30% through this one, the No Gods, No Monsters, and I was finding it hard to follow, to be honest. And I wasn't going to DNF it because I think I wanted to know what was happening and what was going to happen, but it was becoming very hard to get back into at that point. So for me, it was a bit of a challenging read, and I listened to it on audiobook. I do recommend the audiobook. The audiobook reader is really good, and I feel like he had a good voice for the story and the characters and things like that. I thought it was really good. But yeah, it was just kind of hard to like follow with all the names and all the characters. They felt very similar to me in a lot of ways, and without knowing the background, the initial mystery, I didn't know what was going on. And it did the same thing that the Hacienda did, where there's an opening part and then I completely forgot about that opening part because I didn't have any context for it. And then they mentioned some names later and I was like, oh, right.
Yeah.
We've talked about them before. Okay, got it.
100%. We were talking about this actually, and that's the same thing happened to me. I completely forgot about the opening, because the opening, we'll get into it. Is that your preamble?
That's my preamble. That's okay. My sort of my impression of the story is just, yeah, and of Cadwell Turnbull. The other impression that I was going to say is just, I looked up the book and he had written on Goodreads a like guide on how to read the book. And I didn't read it fully because I didn't really want it to like influence my reading of the book. but it kind of, I felt strange about an author writing about his own book on Goodreads. I felt weird about it.
Yeah. So I don't know how much you've seen of it, Beth, but there is a lot of discourse within like the book review sphere about how much an author should engage with the book review sphere, because reviews are theoretically for the reader. They're for someone who might be interested in the work. They are not, an advanced copy where they are giving feedback on the work. They're not like someone who has been asked to edit or something. And while there is a lot of respectful discourse between authors and reviewers, I feel like it can be an easy place where some authors can overstep, and it can feel a little weird, because that brings a certain amount of pressure to the reviewers of like, well, they're watching me, so I don't want to be mean, I don't want to be whatever in regards to a book. So it also felt a little weird to me when you like sent me that, and I realized that had been posted on Goodreads originally, just because, I don't know, it felt like a weird engagement.
He's kind of placing himself in that space, and yeah, I can see people seeing him in that space and not wanting to necessarily continue to review as honestly, knowing that he's going to see it.
Yeah. And I did read through most of the guide, and I will say I don't feel like it was a very guideful guide. I don't feel like it helped answer any of the questions that I had reading. So my experience with both this book and with Cadwell Turnbull's story, which I believe is called Wandering Devil, his short story in Out There Screaming, the short story compilation by Jordan Peele. I had that same like kind of disconnect with the writing. It felt more like almost like a Paul Bunyan story, like a piece of like folklore, versus like a horror short story, which is, when I'm reading a horror anthology, I am looking for more horror than other genre, and I understand that a lot of people like, you can mix genres, that's fine, that's great. We've had genre mixes that we enjoyed in the past as well, but I think I just had a hard time connecting to it because I was going in with an expectation of it being less folklore and more horror.
If I read the story on its own, I think I might feel differently about it. Like if I just came across it, let's say on the internet, if somebody sent it to me in a link and I just read that story, I think I would like it a lot more than reading it within this anthology. I think plopped in the middle of this anthology, it felt a bit out of place. And I think that's maybe part of it.
I agree with that, because there's also another, I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but there's another short in that same anthology that's much more sci-fi. And while I don't mind sci-fi, I don't read as much sci-fi as I do fantasy and horror, but it just felt so out of place for me that it kind of threw me off when I was reading. And so I think it's that same thing where I do enjoy Cadwell's writing style, and like I like his characters a lot. I think he writes very engaging, very realistic characters, but something about the writing style when going in with a certain expectation doesn't really stick for me. And that might be on me more than anything else. Like, it's very obvious from the reviews that a lot of people really did like connect immediately with this story and the way it was written. Honestly, the main thing for me that really kind of threw me off while I was reading is the fact that we have a strange narration style. And by that, I mean that we do have technically a first-person narration here in No Gods, No Monsters, but they regularly speak in a third-person narrative because they have like a semi-omniscient view of all the characters. So every time I would get reminded that we had a first-person narrator, it threw me off. Like, it was
it's like a jump scare.
It really did. I literally, one of my notes in like the first non-narrator chapter, at the end of it, he pops back up, and I was like, I just got jump scared by the first-person narration.
Yeah. And I think I feel like I like a first person, and I like that kind of weird, unreliable narrator thing. I think he was too reliable.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I feel like I wanted more editorializing. almost.
I almost feel like if you're going to have an outside perspective, like an actual outside perspective looking in on these people's lives in a very voyeuristic way, that there should be more of that viewer's personality infused into the storytelling overall. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Give us more Calvin.
Get more Calvin, please. There was plenty of Calvin, let's be real. Anyway, so I think overall, though, like, my preamble for this is I did end up enjoying this story, like the story of it. I enjoy this story. I might actually go out and read the second one because I'm interested in this world and I am interested in these characters. I'm really hoping that the second one has, now that I'm maybe used to the narration style, now that I'm like used to how this book is going to be laid out, maybe I'll enjoy it more when I go into it.
I'll say when I got to, I think I was at the 30%, I wanted to like stop and it was difficult to get through. Once I got through that, I got to about the 70% mark and I like flew through the rest of it because it was really picking up pace and it was much more interesting. And I think I got, like you said, I got used to that style, if that's worth anything.
Yeah. So I think that is worth something. So in our spoilerful plot points that are coming up, I am going to be focusing mostly on what I perceive as the main storyline that follows a certain subset of characters. I will touch on the other groups here and there, especially when stuff in their chapters intersects more with the main storyline and has an impact on it. But I'm not going to be super focusing on them. So if you like what you hear from the main storyline of this, I do recommend reading the book for yourself because you're not going to get really the full story in this.
Mm-hmm.
And then before we start, I do want to give the trigger warnings. We're not going to be going over anything in explicit detail, and I would not call this book explicit really in any way. However, it does touch on themes of sexual abuse and specifically CSA, domestic abuse, drug use, gun violence, and police brutality. So take care if any of those are triggers for you. You want to get into the spoilers, Beth?
Let's spoil this book.
Spoil this book. Woo!
The main plot is not Calvin's story.
No, you'd think that the narrator would have the main plot, but he does not. So, we open at a parting of ways. We don't know yet, but this is Calvin, our narrator for the remainder of the story. He is going back home to St. Tomian, and he is going to tell us a story. And that's kind of how we lead into this. And then we now move to Lena. We are with Lena as she stands over her brother's body in a morgue. He has been shot.
And I'll note, the Calvin part, I completely forgot for the rest of the book. I didn't remember that happened at all.
No,
so
yeah.
That's also why I was jump scared by the first person, because I was like, wait, what?
100%. I think when we talked about it, you were like, because we were looking up the audio again to try to get some of the names are a little different than I would have expected coming from reading the ebook, which is why we were looking it up. And Beth was like, I think this is a scene with Ridley. And then like listened a little more and was like, who's Tanya? And I was like, oh no, this is the this is the prologue with the narrator before he becomes the like background narrator.
I forgot.
It's a lot. But yeah, so we move to a scene with Lena as she stands over her brother's body in a morgue. He has been shot by a police officer, and she's in shock, obviously, and having a really hard time processing his death. We do learn of childhood trauma in Lincoln's life, and that Lena feels very guilty over never having said anything about that abuse that she witnessed. And so she partially blames herself for Lincoln's downward spiral. And then we get jump scared by Calvin because he pipes up in first person again after a whole chapter of third person narration. And this, I put in the notes, this will throw me off literally every time it happens. We do end up spending more time with Lena. We learn about her relationship with Ripley and that they work at a bookstore that they own as part of a co-op. Their relationship seems very sweet, and they seem to have a lot of open communication. Time kind of moves weirdly in this section, and it literally calls it out in the text. It talks about how grief causes time to move differently. And as someone who has, dealt with some grief in my life, I absolutely agree. Time can blur, time can feel funny. And so we kind of like move dreamily through this section of Lena's life. She has her brother's funeral. The cousin who abused Lincoln is at the funeral and ends up saying something that causes Lena to kind of pop off, and she punches her right in the ear, which God. I was like, yes, girl, do it again. Punch her again.
Yeah, she deserves it.
She absolutely deserves it. Obviously, people pull her back and manage to stop her from completely decimating her cousin. And this is when we find out that like nobody really knows what happened to Lincoln other than Lena. She's the only one that really knows what was going on. Time kind of blurs again, and we flash back and we learn that Lincoln disappeared when he was 17, and that Lena was the only one who was able to track him down. She found him at a friend's house named Thomas, and this is probably where Lincoln's addiction struggle started, as he was using to kind of cope with the abuse that he had gone through. And he confronts Lena when she comes to see him. He says, "You knew, didn't you?" And that's on page 27, and she's unable to answer, freezing again like she froze as a child after witnessing what happened. And eventually she leaves because Lincoln makes it clear that if she doesn't admit what happened, that he doesn't want her help.
As well, I just want to mention that with these flashbacks, I thought, so it's unclear to me, and maybe I'm overthinking it because of the omniscient narrator, but it's unclear to me if this is just Lena remembering things or if this is actually Calvin going into that time and actually like telling us what's happening, because he can go through time and space.
Yeah.
So, and other dimensions and things like that. So it's like, I think it's probably just simply Lena remembering, but it's worth also saying, it's possible that Calvin actually went there and witnessed this.
Yeah, and I kind of interpret it, this specific one, the one when he was 17 and ran away, I kind of interpreted that as maybe her starting to think about it and him kind of slipping back into the time stream to witness the event. Whereas the following flashback that we're going to get to in a bit, I interpret that as a dream that she is having about an event that happened before.
Yes, that one definitely. I just mean this one specifically.
Yeah. No, yeah, I kind of got the idea that like she is remembering, because this is obviously bringing up a lot, like the death is bringing up a lot of this trauma. But I did get the impression, once I understood Kelvin a little bit more, that this was him like literally going back and like witnessing, well, what led to this, basically.
Exactly. And I think, again, like in this part in the book, that wasn't clear, but I think looking back, it does make a lot of sense if he is doing that, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like it could be clearer that he is doing that, or it could be clearer that he is, not that I want him to insert himself into what's going on, but he just gives the facts in a third person way without, and even saying what Lena is thinking. So that's a bit hard for me, I guess, to like square. Yeah.
It's weird. At a point later on, he literally gets like disconnected from somebody that he is currently observing. Yeah. And so it's clear that it is like he latches onto one person at a time, it seems like, and is able to like witness everything in their head. So I guess this could just be her remembering. But earlier in the morgue, when he pops up again, he says, I ask her, do you still feel guilty about that? And like, obviously Lena can't hear him, but I guess my interpretation is that he's either been with Lena this whole time, taking an interest in her story for whatever reason, or since learning of like the fallout from all of this, he has gone back and learned about Lena's story.
Yeah. And we learn as well that he can kind of pluck people out of the time that they're in when he talks to Harry, and they won't remember talking to him. So I think the problem I have is that it doesn't feel like Calvin's voice when he's doing the third person. Like, it feels like it's two different voices. The third person is one voice, because it's it's prose. Like, it is descriptive language. It doesn't feel like a person is saying it as they're telling a story. Like, I'm thinking of The Fisherman by John Langan, and that's in first person, and it kind of like delves into a person telling a story about a person telling a story. And I think it goes one deeper, I believe. And it's very clear who is telling the story. Like, there is a voice, and it just doesn't feel like Calvin has a voice, in my opinion.
I do agree, because it very much feels like Calvin does have a voice. It's just only in his first person narration that he has a voice. And his voice doesn't carry over into him telling us about these other people. And that feels a little weird. And I'm trying to think about, because I don't know how I would handle that as an author. If this was the approach that I wanted to take, was having that kind of switch back and forth between the two narration styles. I just know that for me, it was very disarming every time it happened for a long time into the book. And like, there were points where I completely forgot about Calvin because it would be so long between his inserts. And then I feel like you have to kind of go all or nothing maybe with it. And it felt like it was leaning towards nothing instead.
Exactly. Those are my thoughts as well. And it's hard to say, again, I kind of want to read the second book because I want to sort of see if we get more of that, if it's the same or what. Yeah. I'm interested.
For sure. Ooh, first time second book on David Behaviour, maybe? Question mark.
Maybe.
Whole series? No, I'm kidding.
Bonus episode.
Marginalia. All right. A few days after the funeral, we find out that Ripley, who once again, Lena's partner, is a member of something called the Sen Collective. And it's a group of co-ops that are co-oping together. It's a co-op of co-ops, which I think is very fun. And that he is planning a team building trip, and he's worried about leaving Lena alone. It's a while out, though. He still has a while before the trip actually happens. Lena then dreams of the last time that she saw her brother, which was on a subway train 3 years after her previous flashback. She begs him to let her take him home, but he wants her to admit that she knew what was happening. And she finally does, telling him that she knew something, but that she was scared. But then the dream begins to shift. And this part, honestly, was this was one of the horror moments in it that really worked for me, and is very emotional too. It shifts, and she realizes that he's been shot. Like, she remembers that he's been shot and that he's actually dead, and it like affects the dream, and it's really sad. But then she wakes up, and she hears a voice, a voice from nowhere, and it asks her if she wants the body cam footage. And she doesn't know the voice, but Calvin recognizes the accent, which is apparently a St. Thomian accent from his area. He doesn't recognize the voice, but he recognizes the accent. And Lena is just like, yeah, I want the tape, which I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, girl, you talking to like voices in the darkness? Like, what's going on? And the voice promises that she'll have it in a day. But when Lena like turns on the light mid-sentence, nobody's there. So she kind of thinks she might have been dreaming, maybe. And then the next day, she gets a visit from a woman named Rebecca. Rebecca, it ends up, knew her brother. They knew a lot about her brother. She was a close friend of Lincoln. She was helping him get clean. They were working on making amends with like his different family members and stuff. He had been planning to come see Lena, but he died, unfortunately, before he had a chance. Which, this new information is a little, like, it kind of throws Lena off because Lincoln was found nude after he had been shot by the police officer. So the assumption is that he was, like, running around kind of high out of his mind, naked, and that's why the cop shot him. And now she knows, though, that he had been getting clean, that he had not been using, and so she starts to question a little bit more about what happened. And then she also finds out, and this really throws her off, is that Rebecca knows about the trauma that Lincoln had as a child, and also knows about Lena being unable to intercede with what was going on. And she tells her that she was just a kid, that it's like she's not her fault. And Lena's not able to really accept that at that moment from this stranger. But I think it does reassure her a little that like her brother wanted to say these things to her. He just wasn't able to.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll say just another confusing part for me. I confused the voice with Rebecca, to be honest.
Oh.
I was like, that was a bit, I don't know, maybe it was just the way, like when I was listening to it. But I thought, oh, is like Rebecca tied to this voice? Does she know about the body cam footage? And then later on, she works at the bookstore. And I was like, wait, is this the same Rebecca? And I got a bit confused at that point.
That's fair. I didn't interpret Rebecca as the voice because in this scene, Rebecca invites Lena to a protest that they're planning and like writes her number down on a piece of paper in case she wants to get in contact with her. And after she walks her to the door and comes back, there is an additional note in new handwriting on that paper that's like, as promised, and like the USB drive is there. So I guess that part to me, I was just like, oh, okay, this is the invisible voice person is a different person than Rebecca. Right. Did the narrator kind of like narrate them a little the same, the two voices or something?
No, because they have different accents. He definitely gave Sonia an accent, so
yeah. That makes sense.
Sonia? Yeah, that was Sonia, right?
It's probably Sonia.
Sandra.
That's one of the things where I'm not sure of who it is.
It was definitely Sonia, for sure. I know this. I do know this because she, like, when we get to Malku later, they talk about that and how they orchestrated it and orchestrated by giving the drive to Lena. So you can infer that it is Sonia.
Yeah.
That gave her
and
drive.
Also the fact that Sonia is the only invisible woman running around so far in this story. So far.
Yeah. Well, it's weird too because Lena calls her a voice and I'm like, wait, is she hearing voices or is this actually like a person? And then later when we learn about an invisible woman, that's yeah.
And like I still remained confused for a while. I think I maybe missed that part that you're talking about when Melku and Sonia were talking. Because I still thought that maybe it was Melku because of the ants talking to Dragon later. And I wasn't sure what voice the ants were using, if it was Melku's because they're their ants, or if it was Sonia because she was talking through the portal, or like I don't know. It gets confusing. But no, with the accent, I believe it's Sonia.
Yeah, the narrator gave her the accent. So like I said, at the time I was like, oh, is this just like a voice? Like, and I think that's where I got confused about Rebecca and the USB because I was like, wait, so did Rebecca leave the USB? Because I was thinking of the voice as a voice and not like a person.
Yeah, 100%. Also, I think it's a little freakier that it's a person.
Yeah.
And not just like a weird long distance spell or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Anyway, so this flash drive shows up as promised. And late that night, by herself, because we're starting our secrets and lies, like I said at the beginning, Lena and Ridley seem to have a very open, communicative relationship. And this, I feel like, is where the secrets and lies starts on both their parts, kind of. So Lena waits until later that evening, watches the video on the drive, and what she sees is the police officer running from something and then turning around and shooting what appears to be a large wolf or dog. The officer then turns to speak to like a person that came out of their house to see what was going on and horribly says, "Don't worry, we'll have someone come pick it up." And the woman is like looking at him horrified, and he turns back and it has become a man's body, specifically Lincoln's body. And so now Lena knows her brother was a wolf guy. Lena takes it remarkably well.
A wolf guy.
A wolf guy, not a wolf man.
That's what they're called.
A wolf guy. I can't call them a werewolf. Later on, we learn, like, I feel like that might be a slur.
Wolf guy.
Wolf guy. But yeah, no, she takes it remarkably well after watching this video, and the voice talks to her again and is like, so what are you going to do about it? And even though she's still a little bit in shock, she decides that she is going to, quote, make amends and posts it all over the internet, basically. Calvin, at this point, shows us the power that you were talking about, where he pauses time and speaks directly to the voice. And they tell him that they can't talk to him because they have a contract not to talk to him. And I don't think we ever get back to this.
No, we don't at all. No, I actually forgot about this. Maybe that's part of the second book, because we don't get a lot of the information about the two organizations, the Zuvox and Asha. But that feels like part of it, because there are elements of that to, is it Cassandra?
Yeah.
As well?
Yeah.
Where she's like,
I've never answered
spoken
that.
Of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the contract thing is interesting.
I do have a quote here from it.
Okay.
And it is, it is here that I stop time. The world around us slows, all matter falls silent, and all sound stops. There is only the voice and me. I reach out to the formless thing, trying to access its mind, but finding nothing. In all my time traveling the fractal sea, this has never happened. Minds are always open to me. What are you? I ask directly. What is this? For a terrible moment, the voice doesn't answer, and for the first time, I feel a sense of danger I've never thought to feel. I've signed a contract, it finally says. I am bound not to speak to you. By whom? The universe, it says. And the voice answers no more of my questions.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, I do think that this is probably stuff that's we're going to get more into in the second book. From the how to read that you had linked to me, Cadwell did mention that the first book is like for the humans and the second book is for the monsters. So maybe we're going to get more into that perspective in the second book, because also later on, I don't have this in my notes because I kind of skimmed over a few of the parts, but like Melku also confronts Calvin.
That's right. Yeah.
And they make it clear that like they know when he's watching and stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe the whole Order of Asha has something going on where they, as like a collective, for whatever reason, can sense this interloper.
Well, because Calvin, I think, is also a monster. Right?
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. He just has a different, I don't think they ever really name what his power is, but yeah, he, like Cassandra is a monster, but she's a seer. Like
semi-omniscient.
He's just a semi-omniscient guy.
He can see into minds. He can travel. Like,
I feel like he has one of the craziest power sets of anyone so far. Although I guess he can't really impact anything.
No, I think it's more of like astral projection.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
But yeah, so we don't really get an answer to that. It was weird. It threw me off a little bit. But anyway, like I said, Lena chooses to release the body cam footage. She uploads it to a bunch of sites and like sends it to a bunch of news agencies. She tells Ridley about it, and he's worried about what might happen to Lena and to him, thinking that they might come for her. He doesn't really like have a they in mind, but he's like, hey, if this is a real thing that's happening, there's probably people trying to cover this up.
Well, it was covered up because the footage that was released initially by the police didn't include the transformation.
Correct. The voice then returns and tells Lena to watch the news, and she sees a group of 7 large wolves or dogs blocking the interstate, and when they are approached by the police, they shift into people, and right before it cuts out, she recognizes Rebecca. And so now she knows that the reason that Rebecca knew her brother and was close to him is because they were all part of a wolf pack together. And she's, like, once again, Lena handles things very interestingly. she like is happy about it after she watches it. And I think it's because it confirms that like she's not crazy, that she didn't get like doctored footage or something. But it feels like she takes things way too easy compared to like everyone else in this book, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so at this point, we jump forward 4 months, and we meet one of the characters whose storyline I'm not going to focus on very much. His name is Harry. He is a recently divorced professor who has fallen down the rabbit hole of conspiracy, and I don't like him very much.
He sucks. He sucks so much.
He's so weird. He's so creepy about women, like, all the time. It's very bizarre.
All the time. Yeah.
But we find out that a book has come out called The Fracture Effect, which is about this moment in time where people saw on the news a dead body turn into a wolf, as well as several wolves turn into people, but then all footage of it has since been edited, seemingly, and no one can find the full footage of anything anymore. So a lot of people have been like, that didn't really happen. It was a prank, or, people are misremembering. And then there's people who are like, no, it's very clear that monsters are real. Like, what are you talking about? So
right.
It's like a moment of divide in the community.
In the world.
in the world. And at least the United States. Probably the world. Mm-hmm. And then one of Harry's message board friends goes missing for a while before coming back and posting a bunch of like cryptic clues that lead Harry on a weird scavenger hunt and to a secret meeting at a huge mansion that has a second underground mansion underneath it. Like, once again,
it's like the house from Jurassic World.
Yeah,
it has like the the dinosaurs in the basement.
It kind of, that's a great visualization of it. He meets several other people there who have also followed these clues, including like some guy from his message board. But more importantly, Corona Flood. My instinct is to call her Karuna, but pronunciations. I do like Corona a lot. She seems super cool. The guests kind of talk amongst themselves, and they consider that either they're about to get, inducted into a secret society, or they're about to be sacrificed. Which one happens, Beth?
I mean, they do continue to exist, so it is sacrifice, but it's like they still have bodies, minus an arm.
Minus an arm, yeah. There is a sacrifice.
Which gets eaten. Dragon.
A cute little dragon. They get placed under a weird compulsion spell, seemingly. Like, they can't move or fight against it. And a young child comes out and just, like, chomps down on the fingies of, like, everyone's hand, breathes fire on it, and then just nom nom nom, hand gone. Yeah.
I don't think we learn why. I think that's maybe part of the monster plot.
It's some sort of ritual that what we come to learn is called the Order of Zuvox. Yeah, I'm going to get into this a little bit right here, and then we're going to kind of skim over Zuvox for the rest of the book.
We simply can't.
Yeah, we simply cannot. But we then shift to Dragon's point of view, and we find out that he is essentially a prisoner of the Order of Zuvox. He's sick it's so sad, like instantly sad. He's feeling sick because he had to participate in this ritual, and he ate arm. He didn't eat an arm. He ate like 10 arms. Like, he ate this poor baby.
He just wants pancakes.
He has a creepy caretaker named Smoke, who I think is an evil wizard of some sort. And some glowing ants show up, and they're like, "Hey, dragon, you want to escape?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he goes through a portal and it leads to like a cabin out in the woods, and he meets Malku and Sandra and Sonia, and they tell him, "Hey, we're monsters just like you're a monster." And he's like, "I'm a dragon." And they're like, "That's cool, kid. And we help other monsters. If you want to help us, we'd love that, but you don't have to. Your freedom is not contingent on you helping us." And we kind of vaguely learn that Malku and the rest of them are part of something called the Order of Asha, and that they are opposing the Order of Zuvox, which itself is a splinter cell of another order. And I have so many question marks in this point in my plot summary because it brushes lightly over all this. It does not give us a lot of information.
And I can't tell if that's good or bad. At this point, it's like, it's so much.
Yeah.
It's so much to like remember. And you're like, is this going to come up later? Should I store this in my brain?
Yeah.
Or should I just let it go?
Eventually, I came to realize that this is stuff probably leading into the second book. I think that the second book will deal more with these orders. So, like I said at the top of this, I'm just going to lightly brush over the rest of anything with this storyline, only if it has to do with the main story or intersects with the main story. Mm-hmm. But just know that these guys are running around. They're running around. They're doing stuff. I'm losing my mind.
Everyone's doing stuff.
Everyone's doing stuff. We also briefly touch back in with our semi-omniscient narrator Calvin as he arrives in St. Tomian, and he meets with his deceased brother's wife and child. It's very clear that he has a lot of trauma related to the death of his brother, as well as like everyone else does. And it seems like his niece might also have some powers. We don't get too into it. And that's kind of all we learn about Calvin for now, is that he has a niece and he's home. And then finally we jump over to Rebecca, and we jump over to Rebecca and we learn about her past. So Rebecca, as a reminder, because there's a lot of characters in this, is the woman who came to see Lena about her brother.
I kind of, at this point, don't really like Rebecca very much. Sorry to her, but like, I don't know. She seems very
selfish. And there is a part later on in this section that I kind of skim over, but I do want to touch on it a bit more in our discussion about her mother.
Yeah.
So, but we find out that Rebecca has a strained relationship, or had a strained relationship rather, with her father. As a child, he struck her out of anger, which obviously always wrong. It never happened again, and although it really did seem like he felt guilty about what happened, the trauma had a very deep impact on Rebecca, and she is unable to repair her relationship with him before he dies. Which, once again, understandable. Physical abuse is physical abuse, even if it only happens once. Like, it kind of breaks that trust that you have that it won't happen again. Mm-hmm. And then we kind of zip, and we're 8 months after the fracture. So it's been 4 months now since the last part of the story. Yeah. And we find out that Lena and Rebecca are dating. And when I first read this part, I was extremely confused because I was like, oh no, I thought that maybe the events and like the death of her brother and like the events of the tape and everything had like broken Ridley and Lena's relationship up and that she had moved on. But we find out later that they're just poly. They're just polyamorous and they have an open relationship.
It's so funny that that was what your thought was. I was like, did I miss something? Are these different characters? Because I'm like, is this the Rebecca that we know, or is this some other person? Because she's working at the bookstore, and I'm like, did I just get confused? Was Lena the original person? Are these new people?
That's so valid. I will say, because like there's a chapter where it's like mostly a flashback, and then like Rebecca briefly mentions Lena, and I didn't even clock that it was Lena. And then in the next chapter, it's like I woke up next to Lena, and I was like, wait, wait a minute.
Yeah. And then this is where we learned about Sarah as well. It's like, okay, Sarah is here now.
Yeah. So we find out that Lena and Rebecca are dating. We find out that of the 7 wolves caught on film at the fracture, Rebecca and Sarah are the only ones that remain in the pack. The rest drifted away because strange policemen with like glazed eyes and seemingly under some sort of mind control came to them with like lists of their family members and friends, making like a very obvious threat of like, hey, if you say anything, we're gonna kill your friends and family. And so 3 of them, I think, left at once together, and then the other one kind of drifted away as well. And so it's just Rebecca and Sarah at this point, plus Lena visiting every now and then. And this is also where we learn more specifically that every copy of the protest video, regardless of where it was stored, has been edited to have the last few seconds that show the wolves turning back into humans gone. So something very powerful has edited these things. And we do get confirmation later of what that is. It's a lot. It's a lot. And this is the part of the book where I started being like, techno wizard. This is the part of the book where this is where I was like, oh man, like I'm going to try to push through, but this is hard. I did get more into it again as we went further, but like as everything kept stacking up, I was just like, oh my God, now I have to know who Harry is and who Dragon is and who, like, I was just like so many characters.
For me, it was all the like female names. I was like, wait, is this the same Lena? What are we doing here? Rebecca? Sarah?
Who are these women?
We all know I hate women.
Do be hating women.
But they're just like, I don't know, Sarah just felt very like she didn't have her own personality. Like she felt very generic to me. Like Rebecca and Sarah, I don't know.
I disagree there. I did like Sarah. I liked them going out to like, I'm brushing over a lot of this, but like I liked them going out to the woods so that Sarah could run around and shift because she's obviously processing things. And I don't know. I liked her. I thought she was sweet. But regardless, at the bookstore, like you said, Rebecca works there now. I don't know when that happened. We're not sure what happened, but Rebecca works at the bookstore now. And Lena very subtly in public, in a bookstore, kind of sidles up to Rebecca and is like, have you ever considered churning anyone? And Rebecca kind of realizes that Lena wants to understand her brother better, and that's why she's asking about it. And Rebecca takes her to meet her mom, and this is not a romantic gesture. It's pretty weird. We get some flashbacks of Rebecca's relationship with her mother, and it was obviously very strained, but she was also obviously very worried about her mother dying, and so it becomes clear that she changed her mother at some point.
Yeah.
And after they leave, Lena is pretty upset because it seems very apparent that Rebecca didn't ask before she did it. She didn't like get consent to change her mom. And as Rebecca puts it, into a monster. And like that is a word that seems to be reclaimed by some of the characters in this book, but for others it's obvious that they're like the historical like connotation of monster, which Rebecca is not happy with what she is a lot of the time. And Rebecca admits that she needs to have a conversation with her mom, but this is the part where like I kind of skimmed over it, but I felt like Rebecca's attitude was a little weird and a little selfish in all of this, and I didn't feel like she was being upfront with Lena, and that instead of engaging with Lena and explaining her worries about potentially churning her, she tried to scare her instead.
Yeah, it was so indirect. It was so weird. It was such a weird thing to do.
It was.
I can also see it as a very vulnerable thing to do because I can see feeling some guilt and maybe wanting some like external validation about this thing that you did. And like, that's also very selfish because it's bringing somebody that you care about and being like, look at this thing I did. I think maybe it was good, but maybe it was bad. I don't know. It's like, okay.
It's weird. And the main thing I did appreciate from that conversation is Rebecca admitting that she did need to have like an honest conversation with her mom. And so I'm glad she got there. And like there is some acknowledgement in her internal monologue about how like 10 years ago she wouldn't have been able to take that criticism from Lena.
Right.
So there's potential progress, but right now Rebecca just seems kind of not like a great girlfriend. But they do say, I love you to each other. Aww. Cool. We jump over to Ridley. It's still in the same time period. He's on his way to that co-op meeting that he was going to. And
I forgot about this meeting.
Oh, this meeting was crazy. How did you forget about the meeting?
No. Like before, it was like, oh, he's going to his hometown. And I was like, oh, okay, great. I don't remember why he's doing this. And then they mentioned the meeting. And I was like, oh, right.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
It felt like so long ago.
It was so long ago. It was 100 narrators ago. But so we jump over to him. He's on his way. He's driving. While he is traveling, he's listening to a podcast about the disappearance of Corona Flood. And I literally highlighted that in my book. And I was like, it's her. So it kind of loosely connects like what's happening with the Order over to the main story. Yeah. Ridley is on his way to the collective meeting, but first he stops in his old hometown. He visits a barber shop while he's there, and this is where we find out that he is trans. One of the barbers is a fucking dick to him and is like, oh, I think you're looking for the salon down the street. Like, oh.
It's so weird. I didn't even like clock. I was like, what? Why would he ask that?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I did get it, but I was like, I don't understand.
No, 100%. Well, because up to this point, I don't think Ridley's identity had been really mentioned at all.
Or his like description, really. Like, we didn't get like a very
clear picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, the barber is a dick and asks if he's looking for the slum, but the other barber, Marcus, speaks up and makes it clear that Ridley is welcome here and calls him Riddle. And so we can kind of assume that they have a relationship, and as Marcus cuts Ridley's hair, it does become clear that there is a history there, at least friendship, if not something more. Mm-hmm. And Marcus does ask Ridley to go out for dinner, which I thought was very sweet, but Ridley has to go home because he promised his parents that he'd come for dinner. Mm-hmm. And we meet his parents, and I did not like them at all. They were pretty insufferable. They don't like his job. They don't like his wife. They're very condescending to him. We find out that they are like doctors, and so they have issues with him owning a co-op instead of doing a good job that pays lots of money. And they
don't see it as like a real job. Like, because nobody owns the bookstore, so it would be more legitimate.
Yeah, if it was just his and he had employees or something. Yeah. And then they seem accepting of him being trans, but he at least feels that his father less like really accepts him for who he is and more wants to appear to accept it. And I've met people like that, so I totally get like where he's coming from with that vibe. And that is the vibe that I got off his dad, was like he seemed very smug and like
the relationship here in this conversation made me so uncomfortable, and it was written so well to like make me feel uncomfortable, because I was like, I would want to get out of there. This feels so bad to be in and exist in.
Absolutely.
Like very realistic and very like awful. I wanted to crawl out of my skin.
100%. I agree. It was a very uncomfortable scene for me. Eventually he goes up to his childhood room, and like it's bringing up a lot of mixed emotions, and we kind of learn about how he had difficulty growing up because he was like not only mixed race, not only asexual, but also trans, and like also his parents were like overachieving people who like forced him to participate in a million different like after school things. Like it was just a lot of pressure on this child.
Yeah. They had a vision for him, and it wasn't what he is or was.
Exactly. But we also find out that Ridley is a Le Guin fan. So hell yeah.
There you go.
Hell yeah. Good taste. He decides like, I'm leaving at like 5 a.m. I'm not gonna deal with breakfast with these people. And so he continues his drive, and we do learn more about Corona through the podcast he's listening to. And I literally what I put is, honestly, she seems awesome. And I was hoping this was a clue she wasn't actually dead. And then in parentheses, spoiler, she isn't. And then Ridley knew about her originally because she wrote a lot about cooperative co-ops. And that's kind of like his whole shtick, is like he's super into cooperative co-ops and, you know, unity between communities and helping each other. And also, importantly for the main storyline, we find out that Corona was a believer in secret societies, and that she suggested in a blog that the leaked footage and subsequent cover-up were the actions of 2 different factions. And on page 141, it says, Perhaps it was the terms of a truce, she wrote in her blog, a cover-up that served multiple factions. And we later find out that Corona is big brain genius lady, and she was exactly right. That is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So he finally gets to the co-op. They have their meeting. It's like business as normal. And then who do we see here? Melku. Melku shows up. And they're like, hey, I'm part of this Sen collective. And also, guys, I think that we should stand in solidarity with monsters. And
no ulterior motive.
No ulterior
Don't
motives
worry about it
whatsoever. And I'm laughing because, like, they bring it up. And, like, one of them, Nick, is like,
yeah, monsters
don't exist. What are you talking about? And Melku's like, I'm a monster. So is my friend Cassandra. We should stand in... Guess what, bitch? I'm here. So Melku is basically suggesting that, considering that the collective offers support to marginalized groups, and considering the fact that a lot of monsters are part of those marginalized groups, that they should make it clear that they extend that solidarity out to monsters. Mm-hmm. It is really funny because, like, besides Nick, who is losing his mind, all of them are kind of trying to, like, continue on with business as normal. One of them goes back to keeping the minutes. It's so funny.
It's very good. It's very good. But yeah, it's very, like, intersectional allyship, making the argument for, you know, protection for everyone and including monsters into that intersectionality.
Exactly. The group ignores Nick, which I love. Nick is, like, losing his mind this entire time. Nick is just a random member of the collective. Like, we'll get back to him. They keep asking, you know, questions of Melku. They find out, like I mentioned, that both Melku and their friend Cassandra are monsters, and they discuss what that solidarity would look like. Melku specifies support, protest, and protection. And then finally, Nick completely loses his cool and goes outside for a smoke. We also find out, this is where I was saying, I think that shifter is the preferred term over werewolf. I think werewolf might be considered derogatory amongst the shifter community because of the way that, like, Melku gently corrected someone when they asked about werewolves.
Yeah, and I think it's also, we learn that it's not just wolves. It's
correct.
Like other animals as well. So shifter is more accurate, maybe, and a more precise term.
Exactly. And we find out that Cassandra is a seer of some sort, and that Melku is something called a techmage. And then so everything is normal. Like, Nick is losing his cool, but he leaves. Everyone's, like, matter of fact, discussing meeting stuff. And then out of nowhere, a dude just shows up and throws Nick's arm at the group after threatening Melku. Everyone panics. Melku, like I said, we just found out they're a tech mage. They create some kind of cannon that, like, fires at the spooky guy. And then at the same time, they put everyone into, like, a circle. And the exact, like, timing of everything is really hard for me, even though I did reread the scene a few times. But basically, as they are getting ready to teleport the group or whatever, everyone sees, and I quote, the universe itself stalking across the barn on 2 legs, from page 152. And it's such a wild occurrence that is happening. This is the time when Kelvin gets temporarily detached from Ridley's point of view. Like, everything goes crazy.
Well, and Ridley gets detached from his own point of view.
Yeah!
He completely starts to, like, dissociate.
Well, yeah, because he's seeing the universe.
It feels like for the rest of the book, he's like, he detaches until the protest, and then he kind of, like, realizes he needs to connect back with Lena.
100%. They end up in a warehouse of some sort. They did teleport. And Ridley, like, has figured out kind of how Cassandra's whole thing works. Cassandra's not able to answer every single question. Sometimes she answers with, like, that has never been answered before, or something like that. And he is able to ask her what that thing was. And apparently it was a lesser god that was curious about what they were up to in the barn. And everyone's upset. Like, everyone, you know, everyone just went through some trauma. Teleporting didn't sound like the funnest event that they all just experienced either. It sounded a little painful. And Malku decides that it's best if they leave the collective and teleports everyone back. And I understand the point of this scene, but it did end up feeling a little pointless at this, like, when Malku's just like, never mind.
Well, I think it's to strategically plant the seeds of allyship within a, like, human community. And I think that's maybe what the whole point was. And they didn't expect to be interrupted by smoke. And I think that was smoke.
Okay, is that what you think was that? Okay, that makes sense.
I believe that was smoke.
I didn't know who the F that guy was. When they mentioned a demigod, I was like, wait, are they talking about the guy that threw the arm? And I'm like, no, they're talking about the universe walking across across the room.
Right. Who apparently Sonia has a contract with.
Right. Exactly. So yeah.
Anyway, we cannot get into that.
We can't get into it. Like anyway, sorry.
We cannot even get into, like, Sandra and Sonia, because, like, that's a whole other kettle of fish.
No. So all that happens, Malku decides it's best if they leave the collective and teleports everyone back, which, once again, not a fun experience. Ridley, understandably shaken up from everything that happened, seeks comfort with his friend Marcus. He spills the beans kind of immediately about his wife's girlfriend being a shifter. And from, like, Marcus's reaction and from, like, the flashbacks that we get to their college days, to me, it became pretty clear that Ridley and Marcus loved each other a lot, but, like, it didn't work out between them because they wanted different things out of the relationship. And it really seemed like Marcus didn't really understand Ridley's asexuality / polyamory. Like, that type of affection and love didn't make sense to him, which is fair. But he still is there for his friend, and he lets Ridley stay the night, and they end up falling asleep together. And then the next day, Ridley carves a bird of happiness for Marcus, which has been, like, a reoccurring thing that Ridley has done for those that he cares about. And they get IHOP before Ridley heads home, completely skipping seeing his parents again, which I don't blame him after honestly, everything that's gone down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, I do like how sort of casually things like polyamory and asexuality and trans identity and that sort of thing is just, it's not like a point, like, it's just a thing that exists.
Yeah.
It's not highlighted in any special way. It's
like,
just like,
I don't even think I've mentioned it yet, but, like, Malku is non-binary. It's just part of some people's identity, and I appreciate that there is a variety of people in this. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a variety, and people just exist that way. It doesn't have to be, like, a point of contention. It's a realistic part of life and society.
Exactly. They're not, like, putting a hat on it in the book. Yeah. It's not the main focus, although, you know, the intersectionality of identities is a big focus of the book, but it's not like everything is about the fact that Ridley is trans. And I appreciate that it's just an aspect of his character.
Well, I liked seeing a relationship where Ridley is poly, and that's not compatible with somebody who is monogamous.
Yeah.
And that's just
a realistic
how it is.
Thing. Yeah.
And it's sad, but it's mature to accept that.
100%. And then you just brought them up. It's the sisters. We flash over to Sandra. We learn about her relationship with her adopted sister, Sonia. Not getting too much into it, there is a part that touches the main storyline in that we learn that Sandra and Sonia's parents disappeared while they were on a trip to the mainland. And now, years later, Sonia has managed to find their mother, but they find out that she has seemingly been kidnapped and brainwashed by parties unknown, which I believe connects to the whole brainwashing plot that takes place at the protest later. We're probably going to get more into that in the next book. But we also get confirmation of Corona's theory that there was a cover-up by multiple factions. Like, Sonia just straight up says, like, we worked together with the Order of Zuvox to cover this up, and, like, Malku deleted all the files or whatever. We then also spend a little time with Kelvin, and this is, I don't know how you felt about this part of the book. I don't know if you knew that Hugh Everett was a real person.
No.
Okay, so Hugh Everett is a real-life person, the real physicist who proposed relative state interpretation of quantum mechanics. And it felt really weird to me that he was a character in this, especially considering like the context of his chapters, which were about his death over and over and over again in different realities.
Yeah, it's a little strange. I'm not a huge fan of using real life events like that, especially of a real person's life to further the plot of your book.
Yeah.
Not implying something supernatural. I don't think it's really implying that he's involved in anything supernatural, but it is kind of weird to write a conversation with a real person. I don't know. It feels very strange to me.
It felt a little strange to me, and I don't know. I'm still kind of unpacking how I feel about it. Like I said, mostly just because it was a lot to do with his...
A bit personal.
Yeah, it was not only about his death, but it was about like his mental state at the time of his death, and an interpretation from the outside of that, basically. And it just felt a little strange. Other than that, the other thing that we find out is that Calvin spends so much time quantum hopping because of the loss of his brother, and he specifically visits realities where his brother did not die, so that he can kind of see what a happy life could have been for his brother, which I felt was very sad, and it was very sweet, and it did invest me a little bit more into Calvin's story than anything else really that we've seen from him.
Which is why I wanted more from his voice, his perspective.
Yeah.
Because I think with his power, maybe that's part of it, is that he gets lost in the thoughts and feelings of the people that he latches onto, and maybe that's part of it.
It's an escapism for him.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe part of the latching onto people is to escape from his own circumstance. He wants to sort of experience other people's lives. But I still feel like I wanted more from his voice. Even if it wasn't his perspective, like his, like feeling his narration. So it didn't feel like we were getting narration necessarily. We were getting a third person, like
just a regular third person omniscient view, when we were in reality dealing with a semi-omniscient person, like a person, not just that generic over the shoulder look that we usually get.
Yeah.
All right, so we finally get back to Lena. It's been a while. It's been a minute. And now it is just shy of a year since the fracture. It is actually Halloween, and Lena is getting ready to throw a birthday party for Ridley. We find out that his birthday being on Halloween sometimes means that people are too busy going to Halloween events to really attend any of his parties, which I thought was very sad. I was like, oh, he seems pretty at peace with it, but Lena is really determined to make sure that this year he has a good party. She orders pizza. We have a very long aside about her ordering to the wrong pizza place. I don't know why we needed that, but she orders to the wrong place and has to drive all the way over there and then all the way back. Okay.
It was so much. It was so long.
I don't know why that was there. I legitimately don't know what that added to anything.
I think it maybe added to her mental state. We're trying to get an idea of why she's so stressed. But I'm I don't need that whole thing.
No.
It does. We don't need to describe the whole thing. I don't know.
You could have told me that she accidentally ordered to the wrong place and had to take time to go drive there. I didn't need to have a blow-by-blow of the traffic.
It's giving little kid telling you a story.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I went to the store. Okay.
And then?
Okay. And then?
Yeah.
I was going to get pizza. And then? It's okay. Why?
100%. But yeah, she orders pizza. She makes him a cake. And it's all very sweet, and it's very clear that she is trying to bridge this gap that has formed between them. There is a wall in between their relationship at this point. Besides Ridley and Lena, only Rebecca and Sarah and two other randos from the bookstore attend. And as a reminder, once again, Rebecca and Sarah are shifters. Lena is dating Rebecca. And
Rebecca's dating Sarah.
Is Rebecca dating Sarah? I got the impression that they were platonic, and that Sarah was a little jealous at one point.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm wrong because I know Sarah
but
dated
Sarah
Lincoln.
used to date Lincoln. Yeah. But yeah, it seems like Ridley's having a good time. Everything's pretty chill. And then Sarah asks, who's going to the Monster March next week? And it kills the vibe. Nobody responds, which obviously hurtful for her. She's reaching out for support from her like friend group. And then, so this part, it's obviously not on purpose. And Ridley is very clearly struggling with what happened at the collective. He has not spoken to anyone about it. He has been like keeping everything in, and he's very afraid for himself and for his loved ones. And as a result of that fear, he ends up othering monsters in this conversation that they have, eventually saying, people need to be protected too, on page 233, kind of implying, without really meaning to, that monsters aren't people. And this obviously hurts Sarah very badly because Ridley knows that she is a shifter. He knows that Rebecca is a shifter. And the party ends very awkwardly, and
it felt like a very all lives matter moment.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, like, I believe that this book is giving us a message of unity across these different like spectrums of identity. And I think that Ridley is wrong, but I also think that the book is giving the grace for him to learn and grow from this. And I appreciate that.
Yeah,
you don't often see that in narratives.
I felt very hit over the head by it, though.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. Maybe it's because it's already a perspective I share.
Yeah.
But it was like, maybe I'm not the one that needs to be convinced. Maybe that's what the thing is.
I feel like maybe going back to Final Girl support group, you kind of felt that way too about like the narration of how women always have to be like looking out for themselves. And it's when you already have a perspective, it's very easy to be like, it has a big shiny bow on it, guys. Like it's right there. Versus maybe the people that haven't heard that sort of message before.
True. Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so party ends. Ridley and Lena argue about keeping secrets from each other, but don't say, like, it's very awkward. They go to bed separately. Yeah. And she goes to a swim meet that Sarah is participating in, and she finds out that Sarah purposely holds back during competitions because she wants to be able to participate without outing herself as a shifter. And she also finds out that Sarah and Lincoln were romantically involved before he died. There's just this distance between Lena and Ridley. There's a few days that go by, and then she makes the very, very, very smart decision that the only solution is to take his phone and look through it.
It's always a good idea to look through your partner's phone.
It establishes trust.
Especially if you are having problems communicating.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great way to open that door for communication. It's very healthy. If the sarcasm wasn't obvious, don't go through people's phones. That's weird.
Yeah, but she finds messages from Nick's sister being like, what happened? What happened to Nick? And she texts back.
Well, she starts to. That's the craziest part is like Nick's sister is like, you know, having a breakdown about like Nick disappearing and is like, the cop said, you know, this happened, but like, I don't believe them. And then she's gonna respond. She starts typing a response, which is
oh my god,
crazy sauce. And then the phone resets. And when it turns back on, the conversation and all evidence of like Nick's existence is gone from it. Like there's no contact information. Right. And the voice is here. So obviously it was Melku doing this. The voice returns and it tells Lena that if she stops prying, that the voice will make sure that Nick's family is okay. And eventually, because Lena's being kind of loud, Ridley wakes up, comes out to the living room, stares at his phone on the couch, and asks Lena if she's seen his phone, and she's like, nope. No. Because what we need now is more secrets and lies.
Absolutely. Perfect time.
Perfect time. The next morning, this like continual lack of communication ends up causing Ridley to burn his hand because she doesn't warn him that the pan on the stove is hot. And then they kind of cutely make up. Lena has to help him knead the dough for making bread, and they start talking. He lets her know that he knows that she had that she had his phone. Like, he's like, you had my phone. And she's like, I didn't want these secrets and lies between us. And he was like, he chooses very kindly to be like, all right, well, here's the thing. I'm scared all the time now because of what happened. But I don't want to let that fear rule my life. So they together decide to go to this march for monster rights, basically.
The Monster March.
The Monster March. The fact that they keep calling it the Monster March did make me hear that song in my head over and over.
Somehow the narrator of the audiobook did a good job of not making it sound cheesy.
Okay.
So
that's good.
I will give huge kudos to that narrator, to the audiobook narrator. I think he did a really good job.
Hell yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
So this final section of the book is where all the storylines start coming together, which is, like I said, kind of why we skipped over a lot of them, because they don't start kicking off until right now. Like, it's...
Yeah.
So it's 1 year after the fracture. It's the 1 year anniversary from the fracture. And a bunch of people are coming to this march, the Monster March. They have signs that say, like, monsters, we are with you, stop the hate crimes, monsters are people too. It all seems to be going really well for a while. We kind of get a view of Rebecca and Sarah. They are towards the front of the crowd, making their way up to the Commons, I believe. Or from the Commons to the governor's office, one of those things. But whatever. Ridley and
they're
Lena,
in the streets.
Yeah, they're in the streets. They're protesting. Ridley and Lena arrive a little late, so they're kind of at the tail end of the march. And they're making their way forward because they want to meet up with the others. Ridley really wants to apologize to Sarah for his words. And it starts building up. Oh, we get the name drop, the title card. We get No Gods, No Monsters being chanted, which, for those of you who don't know, is a play on the anarchist slogan, No Gods, No Masters, which is about equality between all people, not putting anyone up on a pedestal, basically. And then the shootings start.
Right. So Harry and Corona are shooting into the crowd because they're being controlled.
Yeah.
It's like so much. There's like so much happening.
I will say, looking at this as the writing of like a crazy event going down, the writing style matches really well with, like,
for sure,
the feeling of being in this. It's really difficult to, like, process the whole thing, though, reading it. So everyone is intersecting at this point. Dragon recognizes, like, Dragon's there too, of course. Dragon recognizes Corona and realizes that these are the people that he burned. And it's not just Corona and Harry, it's like a bunch of them. Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We don't care about those.
But we don't care about them. We're kind of focusing in on the people that are intersecting. And so it seems that their goal, so the goal of this order of Zuvox, is to sow hatred against monsters, because at one point,
I mean, it seems like general discord, right? Like
general discord, but like, it's very interesting to me that up to this point they've seemed like they wanted to cover up the existence, like keep everything secret.
Well, Melkor was covering things up. Melkor.
Sorry, it's like Felkor. Melkor.
But Melkor is from Silmarillion.
Oh, that's even funnier.
Melku was covering it up because I think they wanted to sort of control the narrative.
That's fair.
How things were going to go. And it seems like the Order of Zuvox, like, Smoke and everyone
wants, like, a movement
wants
of power, almost like a power play.
Yeah.
Of fear.
Exactly.
Of wanting fear from, like, the humans towards monsters. So
exactly.
Obviously, like, these shootings are happening. Sarah ends up shifting in order to try to stop the shooters. They are shooting indiscriminately into the crowd as well as at police officers. Like, they are they're having a time. And she ends up kind of being tricked into attacking the police. The shooter that she is going after shoots the police while Sarah is in between them, so that then the police firing back accidentally hit Sarah in her wolf form, and she at this point is like on adrenaline purely and in wolf mode, so she ends up attacking the police. And so
she kills several
officers. Several police officers. It's very descriptive because Rebecca witnesses the whole thing.
Right.
So it becomes clear that, like, obviously Zuvok, they want there to be like a fear of these monsters because fear lets you control people, I feel like, is kind of what they're going for. At the same time, though, Harry finds Dragon and is going to kill him, but then Corona seemingly isn't as under the mind control as the others, and she manages to stop him and instead asks Dragon for help escaping from the situation. And so Dragon transforms. We don't know really what he looks like. It kind of fades to black. I want to know what he looks like.
Well, I think that Dragon also sort of saw Harry as he was, because it seems like Harry kind of not switches back and forth, but he kind of becomes a bit more cogent at a certain point. And I think that Dragon sees that and maybe does want to help.
Yeah. So Corona asks him for help and he tells her to turn around while he transforms because, I don't know, he's embarrassed. And then he flies them out of there. Harry, Corona, and Dragon have left the building. We get back over to Ridley and Lena, and they are in the path of one of the gunmen. They are trying to run away, and Ridley eventually tries to tackle the gunman to the ground in an effort to save Lena, and he ends up getting shot. The gunman gets stopped by Sonia, who shows up invisibly, and because he does manage to tackle the gunman, but then the gunman gets back up and he's about to kill Ridley, and then Sonia intervenes and snaps. This guy's neck just snaps itself because Sonia's invisible.
Rebecca was like, "It's the voice."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, girl.
Yeah, girl. It's more than a voice. It got a body. And so everything is very chaotic. There's more stuff going on with Melku and the others, but we're going to focus in on Lena and Ridley at this point. Lena passes out, and we kind of come to again in the hospital, and we are there with Rebecca. We are there with Rebecca's mother is visiting her, which I felt like was showing them kind of getting that communication going after this tragic event. Lena has found out that Sarah was killed during the protest, and Ridley is also in the hospital from his injuries, and it kind of ends with I don't know. How did you feel about this kind of reunification of the group at the end?
I think at this point I was aware that there was a second book. I think when I started this book I wasn't aware, and then by this point I was, so I'm like, okay, well, this is clearly a setup for the next book. So I guess I didn't feel too strongly about it, to be honest. I think I'm like, okay, yeah, this was the obvious ending. The march happened, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. Set up for the next.
Yeah.
That kind of made sense to me, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. So at this point, Ridley apologizes to Rebecca now because he can no longer apologize to Sarah about what happened. Yeah. I mean, we just kind of end there with an implication of we're going to continue to...
We have the community now.
Yeah.
This is the community.
We're going to push forward now despite the events that have happened.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it was satisfying to me in that way. I mean, obviously it's a tragedy, but it was satisfying in that there was a sense of hope.
Yeah.
For going forward. And I think that's where I'm like, yeah, we're setting up for the next book with a positive message, I guess.
Yeah. And Rebecca, I think, specifically points out, I don't have a pack anymore. I don't have a family anymore. And I really appreciated that Lena and Ridley, made it clear, no, you're part of our family now. We're here with you no matter what. And then at this point, I think it's at this point that Lena reveals that she does have an unedited copy of the body cam footage still.
She still has the USB.
And we do like flashback to the others, like the other groups, and they're also like making moves to like continue moving forward into the next book. And that's kind of where we end, is like with this implication of more to come.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you feel about, what was your overall impression? What would you rate this book?
That's difficult. I think for me, this is like a 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
And most of that is due to the writing style. I think once I got used to it, it was a little easier to like keep up with the flow and the constant character shifts and everything. And like, I feel like, I don't want to, God. I read a very condescending review of the book that basically referred to people who didn't like the shifting narrative as simple-minded, and I was like, all right, buddy. And here's my like, not clap back against that, but to be clear, I have read a lot of books with shifting narratives and a lot of books that like juggle a lot of characters. There was something specifically about the style of this one that made it very difficult for me to like keep everyone in mind.
Yeah.
And it might have been like an uneven amount of chapters, maybe. Like it was just, it felt like there wasn't enough focus on some characters for me to like instantly remember, oh yeah, that's so and so.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I think other than that, though, other than my personal issue with like being able to really hold on to the writing style, I really enjoyed the story. And I am very curious about like where it goes from here. So I would recommend this overall to someone to read. You got to go in with the knowledge that it's going to be like a pretty complex, almost interconnecting short stories rather than
almost an anthology kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that like, what's it called? Oh yeah, like an ensemble piece instead of like a single. Yeah. I agree with you. I was going to say 3 as well. And by the end of it, I think my perspective was that it's the same as what I was saying through the whole thing, is that I like a first-person narrative. It just didn't feel like a first-person narrative.
Yeah.
And I kind of just wanted more of that. I think when you're talking about the shifting and complex narrative of it, I was thinking of The Fisherman by John Langan, where there is an initial narrator, and then he's telling a story, and then he's like, all right, this is the story I heard from this person, and then we shift into this perspective, and I think it goes one more deep. Ooh. And it's never confusing. It's really good. It's very like elegant, and you get the voice of everyone. Like it's very clear who is speaking, and it's very like, I find, I don't know, it's a very well written book, and that's kind of to me the like ideal first person narrative, is where you have that very clear voice and perspective of who is speaking and why. And I feel like I didn't get that first person narrative here. It wasn't, Calvin didn't have a clear voice to me. And I guess I understand it's the same thing with the short story by Cadwell Turnbull, where I understand that it's kind of a folk tale because it's about a musician, and it's told like a song because of that. And it's a very creative choice. I just don't know. I don't know how well it worked for me. And it kind of feels like the same thing here, where Calvin doesn't quite have that voice. And maybe it's because of the escapism and because he sort of loses himself in the thoughts and time and mind of the people that he's latched onto. And so maybe that's deliberate, but I still think he could still have, some editorializing as he's going through this.
Yeah, and I agree. And I do feel like, because I tend to, like, I'll read a book and I'll form an opinion on it. And then sometimes if I read the next in the series and it kind of goes back and answers some of those like lingering questions or the lingering issues that I had with the first one, it will change how I feel about it. So I do think that I want to read the second one, because like maybe we get more stuff about Calvin in the second one and it explains more why he is the way he is. And if we do get that, I think that it would make me appreciate the first one more. But as of right now, just as a standalone story, I agree with you about that. About just the narrative not really feeling like Calvin's the whole time, even though it is Calvin's the whole time.
Yeah, for sure. Worth a read, though. I agree.
Worth a read. You might want to have a list of characters written down the whole time while you're there.
Yeah.
Is it time?
We just said that simultaneously.
I know.
Impressive.
It's
Do
time.
I get to spin, don't I?
You get to spin the wheel.
Gay!
Wait a second. What does that mean?
Oh, I remember this. It means that our buddy Caius gets to come and make us read another gay book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Let's read Camp Damascus.
Hell yeah. Sounds great. All right. Thanks for listening. If you want more from us, our social media is in the show notes, as well as a link to our Discord where you can join the conversation and maybe even suggest even more gay books for us.
Let's get out there and commit some David behavior.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And then, God bless America.